The day the aliens came, the sky over New York turned purple. Not the whole sky, just a circle about the size of the full moon that appeared directly above the United Nations building. Greg Harrison had been drinking his morning coffee when the call came. As Earth's top diplomat, he was used to crisis calls. But nothing like this. 12 hours later, he stood in the UN General Assembly Hall looking up at the creatures who called themselves the Galactic Concord. The aliens didn't look too strange. The one called Zor-Thul had 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head, just like humans. But his skin shimmered like oil on water, and his eyes were 3 times larger than they should be. When he spoke, his mouth barely moved, yet everyone heard him perfectly in their own language. "We welcome Earth to the galactic community," Zor-Thul said, his voice smooth as silk. "We have watched your development with great interest." Greg kept his face neutral despite the chill that ran down his spine. They had been watching. For how long? "We appreciate your welcome," Greg replied. "Earth is eager to learn about our galactic neighbors." Zor-Thul's wide mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "And we are eager to guide you. Young species need protection as they join the greater community." There was that word, protection. Gray had been a diplomat long enough to recognize when someone was selling something nobody asked for. The meeting lasted 6 hours. The aliens spoke of trade, technology sharing, and cultural exchange. But whenever Greg asked about specific technologies, especially faster than light travel or advanced weapons, Zor-Thul would smile and say, "In time, when you're ready." By evening, UN security had arranged for the aliens to stay in a specially prepared building. As Greg walked to his car, his phone buzzed. It was Samantha Wells, a Navy commander he'd worked with on international security matters. "Tell me everything," Sam said when Greg answered. Greg looked around to make sure no one was listening. "They're offering us membership in something called the Galactic Concord. Technology, medicine, cultural exchange." "What do they want in return?" Sam asked. "That's the strange part. They say they just want to welcome us to the galactic community. But they keep talking about protections and guidance like we're children." "Nobody gives something for nothing," Sam said. "I don't like it." Greg sighed. "The president wants me to continue negotiations. We're moving to the lunar base next week. More private." "Good. I want to scan their ships while they're docked. Something doesn't add up here." 2 weeks later, on the lunar base, Greg sat across from Zor-Thul and 5 other alien representatives. The terms they offered seemed generous on the surface. Medical technology that could cure most human diseases, faster spacecraft, clean energy systems. But each offer came with strings attached. "We will provide the healing devices, but our technicians must operate them. We will improve your ships, but Concord navigators must be aboard all vessels that leave your solar system. The energy systems require elements only found on Concord worlds, which we will supply at reasonable rates." During a break, Greg stepped into a private room where his aide, Frank Morris, waited with notes. "They're trying to make us dependent on them," Frank whispered. "Every gift keeps us under their thumb." Greg nodded. "And did you notice how they reacted when I mentioned our plans to establish our own colony on Mars? They almost panicked." "They don't want us expanding on our own," Frank said. That night, as Greg looked out the window at the Earth hanging in the black sky, he received a message from Commander Wells. "Scans complete. Their ships have weapons that could destroy our entire fleet in seconds, but they have weaknesses too. Keep them talking. We need time." Greg stared at the message for a long time. The alien smiled and spoke of friendship, but came with ships that could destroy humanity. Whatever game the Galactic Concord was playing, Greg was beginning to think humanity needed to learn the rules quickly, or better yet, write their own. 3 months passed. The talks with the Galactic Concord continued daily. Greg Harrison hardly saw Earth anymore, spending most of his time in conference rooms on the lunar base. Frank Morris sat in his small office reviewing files from the latest meeting. Something didn't feel right. The aliens always seemed to know what the human team would say before they said it. He decided to check the communication systems. At 3 a.m. lunar time, Frank found it. A small device hidden in the air vent of the main meeting room. It wasn't just listening to them. It was scanning their tablets, phones, and computers. The aliens knew all their plans. Frank went straight to Greg's quarters and woke him up. "They're spying on us," Frank whispered, showing Greg the device. "And I think they've been doing it since day one." Greg held the small silver disc. It hummed faintly in his palm. "Get this to Commander Wells. Don't tell anyone else." The next morning, Greg met with Zorthal as usual, hiding his anger behind a diplomat's smile. The alien seemed particularly pleased today. "We have prepared the final draft of our cooperation agreement," Zorthal said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Your leaders will find these terms most generous." Greg read through the document, his stomach sinking with each page. The terms would give the Concord control over Earth's space travel, military development, and even some areas of government. In return, humans would receive limited access to alien technologies. "This is very detailed," Greg said carefully. "We'll need time to review it." "Of course," Zorthal said with his strange smile, "though we had hoped to conclude matters this week." Later that day, Greg received an encrypted message from Earth. It contained information from Dr. Olivia Grant, a scientist working in a secret facility in Arizona. She had been studying the alien language and technology samples. Her message was short: "They're lying about everything." Greg opened the attached files. Dr. Grant had discovered that the medical devices the aliens offered contained tracking technology. The improved spacecraft would require constant alien supervision. The clean energy would make Earth completely dependent on rare materials only the Concorde could provide. Even worse, Frank had decrypted some of the aliens' private communications. They referred to Earth as Resource World 3712 and discussed how to best extract its minerals, water, and biological samples while managing the native population. Greg's secure phone rang. It was Commander Wells. "We've analyzed their ships," she said without greeting. "They've been lying about their weapons capabilities. But we've also found something interesting. Their communication systems have a flaw we might be able to exploit." "How long would you need?" Greg asked. 6 months, minimum. Maybe a year to develop anything useful. Greg looked out the window at the stars. "I'll buy you as much time as I can." The next day, Greg entered the meeting room with a new determination. Zorthal and the other aliens waited, looking confident. "Have your leaders reviewed our generous terms?" Zorthal asked. Greg nodded. "They have a few questions. First, why does this agreement give the Concorde mining rights throughout our solar system?" Zorthal's smile faltered slightly. "Merely a standard clause. For efficiency. And why would we need your permission to travel to Mars?" "For your safety, of course. Space is dangerous for young species." Greg pulled out evidence of the spying device. "And was this also for our safety?" The room went silent. Zorthal's skin changed color, darkening to a deep purple. "Such measures are standard diplomatic procedure," he said finally. "We meant no offense." "I'm sure," Greg replied coldly. "Just as I'm sure you meant no offense when referring to Earth as Resource World 3712 in your private communications." The alien's large eyes widened. For the first time, Greg saw what might have been fear on a non-human face. "You misunderstand," Zorthal began, but Greg cut him off. "I think we understand perfectly now," he said. "My government needs time to reconsider our position. We'll resume these talks in 1 month." As Greg walked out, he knew they had just entered dangerous territory. But Earth needed time to prepare for whatever came next. 1 month stretched into 2. The aliens grew impatient, but Greg Harrison kept finding reasons to delay. Each postponement bought Earth more time to prepare. On a rainy Tuesday, President Diane Miller called an emergency meeting at the White House. Greg sat at a long table with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. "Dr. Grant, please share your findings," the president said. Olivia Grant stood up. She was small, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "We've analyzed the alien technology. They're holding back their most advanced systems. What they've offered us is outdated by their standards, like giving a smartphone to someone and only letting them use it to make calls." Admiral Wells nodded. "We've been studying their ships. They have weapons that could destroy our entire fleet in minutes. But they also have weaknesses. Their shields can't handle certain frequencies. Their computers aren't as secure as they think." President Miller looked at Greg. "And now they're demanding we sign their agreement." "Yes," Greg said. "Zorthal says the Concord is losing patience. They want an answer tomorrow." The room fell silent. Finally, the president stood up. "Greg, tell me honestly, can we trust these aliens to treat Earth as an equal partner?" Greg thought about the spying, the lies, the condescension. "No, Madam President. They see us as a resource to be managed, not as equals." "Then we have our answer." She handed Greg a sealed envelope. "These are your new instructions." The next day, Greg entered the meeting room on the lunar base for what might be the final time. Zorthal and 6 other aliens waited, their expressions unreadable. "Ambassador Harrison," Zorthal began, "the Concord has been most patient. But now we require your answer. Will Earth accept our generous offer of protection and guidance?" Greg opened his envelope and read the words carefully. "The United States of America, the European Union, the Chinese Federation, and all other nations of Earth have considered your proposal. After careful deliberation, we must decline." The aliens stared at him. No one spoke for several seconds. "Perhaps we were unclear," Zorthal said finally. "This is not a negotiation. The Concord has decided that humanity will join as a protected species. This is for your own good." Greg stood up straight. "No, you were very clear. And so are we. Earth will not accept these terms. We are withdrawing from these talks, effective immediately." Zorthal's skin darkened to almost black. "No species has ever refused membership in the Concord." "Then I guess we're the first," Greg said. He nodded to the human delegation, who began packing their materials. Zorthal rose to his full height. "This is a mistake. There are dangers in the galaxy you cannot comprehend. Without our protection, you will not survive." Greg looked the alien in his large eyes. "We'll take our chances. You will regret this decision," Zorthal said coldly. As the human team left the room, Frank whispered to Greg, "They're shocked. They never expected us to walk away." "That's their weakness," Greg replied. "They can't imagine anyone refusing them." What none of the aliens noticed was Commander Wells at the back of the room, her tablet silently copying data from the Concord systems. While the aliens focused on Greg, she had connected to their network and was downloading everything she could find. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Greg looked out at the stars one last time from the lunar base. He knew they had just made a dangerous enemy, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, he felt a sense of hope. Earth had surprised the Galactic Concord today, and that was just the beginning. As their ship departed, Frank asked, "What happens now?" Greg watched the lunar surface fade away. "Now we get ready, because they'll be back." Behind them, the aliens watched the humans leave, still unable to believe that anyone would refuse the Concord's generosity. It had never happened before. Everything had changed. 5 years passed. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth went quiet. The Galactic Concord sent messages, but Earth never replied. Thol told the Concord Council that humans were likely struggling without alien help, perhaps fighting among themselves as primitive species often did. The truth was very different. Deep beneath the Arizona desert, Dr. Olivia Grant stood in a vast underground room filled with scientists and engineers. On a huge screen, numbers and diagrams flashed by. showing the results of their latest tests. "The new shield system is working," she announced to the crowded room. "It can withstand energy levels 3 times higher than what the Concorde ships use." 5 years of non-stop work had changed Olivia. Her hair was now completely gray, and lines marked her face, but her eyes shone with excitement. She had led the team that took the alien data Commander Wells had stolen and turned it into working technology. "How soon can we install it on the fleet?" asked a voice behind her. Olivia turned to see Admiral Samantha Wells. The Navy commander was now the head of Earth's combined space forces, in charge of the secret fleet being built on the far side of the moon. 2 weeks for the first ship," Olivia replied. "A month for all of them." The two women walked together through the facility called the Hive, Earth's Center for Reverse Engineering Alien Technology. What had started with a few dozen scientists now employed thousands of the brightest minds from every nation. "The Concorde thinks we're hiding in fear," Sam said with a small smile. "They have no idea what we've been doing." "Would they even believe it if they knew?" Olivia asked. President Miller had made a bold decision after walking away from the negotiations. Instead of announcing what had happened, she had gathered the leaders of every nation and proposed a plan. Complete secrecy while Earth prepared. The entire planet would work together, pooling resources and knowledge to get ready for the aliens' return. For once, the countries of Earth united with a single purpose. Old enemies became partners. Resources that once went to fighting each other now went to building ships, weapons, and defenses. Across the solar system, mining operations pulled resources from asteroids and moons, shipyards hidden in Earth orbit, and on Mars built vessels using designs that combined human innovation with alien concepts. Scientists studied the stolen data day and night, learning the alien strengths and weaknesses. In a secure room beneath the White House, Gray Harrison presented the latest diplomatic report to President Miller. "Our deep space monitoring stations picked up Concorde communications," he said. "They're discussing Earth again after years of ignoring us. Some members think it's time to check on the wayward humans." President Miller, now in her second term, nodded thoughtfully. "They're coming back to see if we've learned our lesson." "Yes, Madam President. Intelligence suggests they'll send a small fleet within the next few months." "And are we ready for them?" Greg smiled. "More than ready." On the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Captain Eric Daniels watched his crew run through drills. His ship was hidden in orbit around Jupiter, along with 30 other vessels of similar design. From the outside, they looked simple, none of the flashy designs from science fiction movies. But inside, they contained technology that even the Concorde would envy. "Message from Admiral Wells, sir," his communications officer said. "Long-range sensors have detected 5 Concorde ships entering the solar system." Eric felt a mix of tension and excitement. For 5 years, they had prepared for this moment. "Acknowledge the message," he ordered. "Tell the Admiral we're ready." Across the solar system, humans prepared for the return of the Galactic Concorde. But this time, they wouldn't be sitting across a negotiation table. This time, they would be meeting as equals. And the aliens had no idea what was waiting for them. The 5 Concorde ships moved with confidence through the solar system. They were large vessels, each one bigger than anything humans had built before the aliens first arrived. Their purple hulls gleamed in the sunlight as they passed Mars and headed toward Earth. On the lead ship, Commander Krell Vor watched the blue planet grow larger on his screen. He was Zorthal's nephew, sent to complete the work his uncle had failed to finish years ago. "Scan for human vessels," he ordered. "Only primitive satellites and a small space station, Commander," his officer replied. "Nothing that poses any threat." Krell Vor smiled, just as he expected. Without Concorde guidance, the humans had likely made little progress. This would be easy. "Send the message," he ordered. The message was broadcast on all Earth frequencies. "Attention humans. This is Commander Krell Vor of the Galactic Concorde. Your period of isolation has ended. Prepare to receive our delegation and accept the terms of membership. Resistance is not advised." In the White House Situation Room, President Miller watched the alien ships on a large screen. Greg Harrison stood beside her, along with military and science advisors. "They're following the exact path we predicted," Admiral Wells said. "They have no idea we can see them." "What about our ships?" the president asked. "The Defiant is in position. The rest of the fleet is hidden behind Jupiter, ready to move on my command." President Miller nodded. "Let's show them what 5 years of human ingenuity can do." As the alien fleet approached Earth orbit, a single ship appeared, moving out from behind the moon. It was the U.S. Defiant, captained by Eric Daniels. On the Concorde vessel, Krelvor leaned forward in surprise. "What is that?" he demanded. "A human ship, Commander. But it's using technology they shouldn't have." The Defiant was smaller than the alien vessels, but its design was sleek and purposeful. Scans showed energy readings that no primitive species should be capable of producing. "Open communications," Krelvor ordered. Captain Eric Daniels appeared on the screen. He sat calmly in the command chair of a bridge that looked nothing like the primitive human technology the Concorde expected. "This is Captain Daniels of the U.S. Defiant. You have entered Earth's space without permission. State your intentions." Krelvor was shocked by the human's tone. Where was the fear? The respect? "This is Commander Krelvor of the Galactic Concorde. We have come to complete negotiations for Earth's entry into the Concorde. Your resistance 5 years ago was a mistake. Now you will accept our terms." Eric smiled slightly. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Commander. Earth is not interested in your terms." Krelvor's skin darkened with anger. "You have no choice in this matter. We will destroy your vessel if necessary and speak to your leaders directly." "I wouldn't recommend that," Eric replied calmly. "Prepare weapons," Krelvor ordered his crew. "We will teach these humans a lesson in respect." Suddenly, alarms blared across the Concorde ships. Behind them, 30 vessels appeared from the shadow of Jupiter, moving with impossible speed toward the alien fleet. "Impossible," Krelvor whispered. "They can't have built such a fleet." Admiral Wells' face appeared on his screen, replacing Captain Daniels. "This is Admiral Samantha Wells of Earth's Defense Forces. Your ships are now surrounded. Power down your weapons immediately." Scans showed the human ships had shields and weapons equal to or greater than the Concorde vessels. How could they have developed so quickly? President Miller appeared next, standing in what was clearly a command center far more advanced than anything the Concorde believed humans capable of building. "Commander Krelvor, this is President Diane Miller. 5 years ago, we walked away from your negotiation table. We refused your protection because we saw it for what it was: control. Since then, we've been busy." She smiled. "Now we'd like to propose our own terms for relations between Earth and the Galactic Concorde. I suggest you listen carefully, because this time, we're equals at the table." Krelvor stared at the screen, the impossible truth slowly sinking in. The humans hadn't been hiding in fear these past 5 years. They had been getting ready. News travels fast, even across the vastness of space. Within weeks, word spread throughout the Concorde worlds about what had happened in the Sol system. The humans had not only refused membership but had somehow developed technology that rivaled the Concorde's own. In a grand chamber on the Concorde's central world of Acrelia, the ruling council met in emergency session. Zor Thol stood before them, trying to explain the unexplainable. "The humans should not have been able to advance so quickly," he insisted. "Someone must have helped them." The council leader, an ancient being named Vexorn, leaned forward. "Yet they did advance, and now your nephew's fleet sits in Earth orbit, accepting human terms instead of enforcing our own. This is unprecedented." Other council members murmured in agreement. For thousands of years, the Concorde had followed the same pattern with new species: offer protection, establish control, and slowly harvest resources while keeping the species dependent. No one had ever walked away from the table before. On a planet called Tellus, home to the Tellarites who had been part of the Concorde for 3 centuries, things were changing too. Word of the humans' resistance had reached them. Their ambassador, Dren, stood before his world's leaders. If the humans could develop independently, perhaps we can too, he suggested. I propose we request renegotiation of our Concord membership. It was a radical idea. No species had ever requested changes to their agreements, but the human example gave them courage. Meanwhile, on Earth, Greg Harrison prepared for his newest role. President Miller had appointed him as Earth's first ambassador to non-Concord worlds. His mission: build alliances with other species who might want more independence. Olivia Grant entered his office as he packed. Ambassador Harrison, I have something for your journey. She handed him a small device. It's a quantum communicator based on Concord technology, but with our improvements. You can contact Earth instantly from anywhere. Greg smiled. 5 years ago, we could barely understand how their communicators worked. Now we're building better ones. And there's more, Olivia said. We've discovered something about their communication network. It has a weakness, a flaw in its security protocols. With more work, we might be able to access their entire information system. Keep working on it, Greg said. That could change everything. Greg's ship, the Horizon, departed the next day. Its first destination was Proxima Centauri, where a species called the Lorians had maintained limited contact with the Concord for years. They were interested in what humans had to offer. The Lorian leader, Keth, met Greg in a crystal dome overlooking their capital city. Unlike the Concord representatives, Keth spoke plainly. We have watched your people with interest, Ambassador Harrison. You did what no one else dared. You refused the Concord's generosity. Greg nodded. We saw that their protection came with too high a price. We feel the same, Keth replied. But we lack your resources to stand alone. Perhaps neither of us needs to stand alone, Greg suggested. By the time Greg returned to Earth 3 months later, he had established contacts with 3 species who sought alternatives to Concord domination. 2 more had sent representatives directly to Earth. In the Concord Council chamber, the unity that had held for millennia began to crack. The dominant species blamed each other for mishandling the human problem. Some wanted to crush Earth with overwhelming force. Others argued for a more diplomatic approach. The humans must be made an example, one council member insisted. Vexorn, the ancient leader, raised a hand for silence. Before we decide, understand what is happening. The Tellarites have formally requested renegotiation of their membership terms. The Lorians are delaying their resource payments. The Proxians have asked for access to technology we've withheld. He fixed his large eyes on Zorthol. This is spreading. When the humans walked away from our table, they did more than reject us. They showed others it was possible. The galaxy was changing, all because one species had dared to say no. 10 years after walking away from the negotiation table, Earth had changed the galaxy forever. The massive space station Liberty hung in Earth orbit, visible from the ground as a bright star that symbolized humanity's new place in the cosmos. Today, the station buzzed with activity. Representatives from 17 different species gathered in the Grand Meeting Hall. Some were former Concord members who had broken away. Others were species that had maintained their independence but lived in fear of the powerful alliance. All had come to witness something historic. Greg Harrison stood by a large window, watching Earth below. His hair had gone completely gray, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. Beside him, Admiral Wells wore her dress uniform, now decorated with medals that hadn't existed a decade ago. Hard to believe it's been 10 years, Sam said. Remember when we thought they might destroy us for refusing their offer? Greg smiled. Now look at us, hosting the founding conference for the Interstellar Alliance. The Concord still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. When humanity had shown that independence was possible, the cracks had quickly spread. Species that had been under Concord control for centuries began demanding better terms. Some left entirely. The once mighty coalition fractured as its ruling species fought among themselves. President Alan Parker, who had taken office after Diane Miller's 2 terms, entered the room. He would be signing the treaty today on behalf of Earth. "Is everything ready?" he asked. "Yes, Mr. President," Greg replied. "All 17 delegates are prepared to sign." The meeting hall filled quickly. Humans mingled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Near the front, Dr. Olivia Grant sat with a group of scientists from various worlds. Her team's breakthrough in understanding the Concorde's quantum communication network had been crucial. By accessing their information systems, Earth had exposed centuries of Concorde lies and manipulation to the galaxy. At the appointed time, President Parker stepped to the podium. 10 years ago, Earth faced a choice, he began. Accept terms that would have made us dependents of the Galactic Concorde, or walk away and face the unknown alone. We chose independence. He looked around the room at the gathered representatives. We didn't know then that our decision would change the galaxy. We only knew we had to stand up for ourselves. Now we stand together with all of you, not as rulers or subjects, but as equals. The Lorian leader, Keth, who had been one of the first to ally with Earth, spoke next. For centuries, the Concorde controlled through fear and false promises. They took from many worlds while giving little in return. Today, we create something better, an alliance based on mutual respect and true cooperation. One by one, representatives from each world spoke. The Tellarites, who had broken free after 300 years of Concorde membership. The Proxians, who had hidden their technological advances from Concorde inspectors for generations. All had stories of resistance and hopes for a better future. Finally, it was time for the signing. President Parker picked up the ceremonial pen and signed the Treaty of Seoul, officially establishing the Interstellar Alliance. Each representative followed, adding their name or mark to the document. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Wells' communicator beeped. She checked it and showed the message to Greg. 3 more worlds are requesting to join, she said quietly. Word is spreading fast. Across the room, Dr. Grant caught Greg's eye and smiled. They had come so far from those tense days of early negotiations. The Concorde had never understood what they were dealing with when they met humanity. A species too stubborn to accept control, too creative to remain contained, and too determined to give up. Outside the windows of Liberty Station, Earth turned slowly below, while the stars beyond held countless worlds now looking to humanity not with condescension, but with respect and hope. All because, when pressed, humans had done what no other species had dared to do. They had walked away from the table, and everything had changed.